it's so near and dear to our hearts. When Drew decided to go to Rose, there were a lot of emotions that went with that. It's a great school. And when the wreck happened, his friends were on break. It was the beginning of break. And the very next day, the room was full of guys who turned around and came to the waiting room to be with us, to be with Drew, and mostly his fraternity brothers and his football team. And they spent their entire week with us. They slept on the floor. They slept everywhere, and they never left us. The president called us twice that week. He sent his secretary to visit with us. The coach just spent, I don't even know how much time, all the coaches spent so much time with us. And then they had t-shirts made and brought to us within 3 days with our theme. Most important day is today, because truly, we never know what's going to happen to us. And the most important day is today, and we should all treasure it. And that became the football team's slogan for the year. Sold t-shirts and bracelets and everything. And later, we decided to reconnect with Rose after his friends who were in biomed graduated, because we thought it might be difficult for those guys and gals who he was so close to work on a project with Drew. And when we worked on these projects, when we first got together with the teams, it was pretty emotional. Mostly because when they first came to us, we just thought, that could be Drew. That would have been Drew. This is exactly what he would be doing. And we wanted it to be Drew. Quite frankly, a part of us did. And they did such a great job. And each one of us told us at different times how much it meant to them to do these projects because Drew was involved. And they didn't know him, they knew of him. But that was really special to us, and they did a fabulous job on the projects. Not only that, the professors that were involved, they knew Drew. And it meant a lot to him and to Dr. Rogie and to Dr. Livesay to work on these projects with the students. And to have this connection again is really meaningful to us, and it's meaningful to Drew, because we go back and forth to Rose now to work on the projects. It's great to be back there. Drew loves going to the bookstore. Every time he gets at least one hat, sometimes two. Gets a new shirt.
Lots of gear, I know. It's all geared up.
It's all about gear.
To get you in some Saluki stuff.
The gal at the bookstore, she knows Drew, and she's always getting him all fixed up. So it's great to be back on campus.
You mentioned the motto.
Yes.
How did that come about? Is there a story behind that? Did it just kind of happen one day?
There's a story behind it. Mark may tell that story best. But the story is Drew and Derek, Ben, were sitting on the couch in Coach's office, and they were discussing what the motto for the next year should be. And Drew said, "Coach, I think that we could win conference next year if we just practiced like every day was game day. And we put our all into it every day, Like it was the most important day. If practice was the most important day. I think that should be our team motto. The most important day is today.
And that was at Rose.
So, that was at Rose.
That was 2 weeks before his accident.
Yeah. And so?
So it was interesting because the whole story is I was getting out of the elevator on the neurocritical care unit, and I actually just lost it, and just as the doors were opening, and the doors open and there's Coach Englehart staring into the elevator, and my knees are buckling, and he kind of grabbed me under the armpits and picked me up and got me up against the wall and stabilized me. He said, "There's something you need to know." And he said, "Drew and Ben had been in my office just 2 weeks ago." He said, "Last year,
Right before the wreck, that became really important. Really important. His final paper that he turned in the day before the wreck was on brain injury and music therapy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we started music therapy in the second hospital we were in. Well, Drew wrote a paper on that. That's probably important. So,
I guess after all this, finally to kind of wrap up, what would you tell somebody, whether they were facing a similar situation or something completely different that they were down about and down on? What would you tell them?
well, we get phone calls. You know, I'll say regularly. I wouldn't say every week. And the phone calls are from people who aren't sure what to do. And what we tell them oftentimes are, we're not in your shoes, and we would never tell you what to do specifically. But what we will say to do is be patient and listen to the person that you love, who you're with in this journey. Listen to them fully, because for one thing, that's the person you're going to live with, hopefully for the rest of your life. And if you two aren't in agreement, you probably won't live with them for the rest of your life. Choose wisely and realize the choices that you make today are the choices you'll live with.
That day when everything started, the calls, the hospital, all that stuff, could you have ever imagined at that point that you'd be here today and at this point? I mean, there's no way.
No. And I think too, there's no way you can imagine it and you're not ready for it. Which is the other thing when I talk to people who are where I was then. I don't ever try to project them into where I'm at now, because nobody's ready for that. Because you are at today. You can only handle today, because it's just too hard to think about. I wasn't ready to think about, what if 6 years from now this is where I am, because it's too hard to imagine being there. But now that I'm here, I am so good here. I could wish for all kinds of other outcomes, but really, we are so good here, because there's so much to be thankful for. There's so much.